right tools make all the difference. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and I kind of figure that you guys already know that old clipboard trick, right? Like, there's some place that you don't belong, but you want to get in there, so what you do is you grab a battered old clipboard and you stuff some papers in there, and then you just walk around scowling and looking at everybody. Works like magic. But there are a couple of similar tactics that you can apply in bureaucratic headquarters. So today I'm going to take you through a couple of my favorite props, and then I'll give you a bonus glimpse of another prop that's useful if you're doing human intelligence collection. All right, the first prop is just a mid-sized 4-function calculator. Not one of those tiny promotional ones with the little itty-bitty buttons, and not one of the really big ones that are like graphing calculators. Now, the situation where you're going to use this is where there's a PowerPoint brief that has a lot of numbers on it, and you are not the person receiving the brief. This works best if you're the number 2 man for your organization, and if you want to see what I mean by that, watch this video. The point of the calculator is to let the people in the room, and particularly the briefer, know that somebody is checking the math on those slides. You see, the way I figure it, there's a 3 to 5% error rate whenever human beings type numbers onto PowerPoint slides. So if you're looking at a brief that has more than about 20 numbers, it's a pretty good bet that somewhere there is a math error. So as soon as you start clicking away on your calculator, the briefer realizes that, he probably should have checked his numbers a little better. Now, you can use this as an intimidation tactic. You can find a math error and you can start chipping away at the credibility of the briefer, but honestly, that's a little bit over the top, and you're not winning any friends while you're doing it. Instead, I find that the best way to use this calculator tactic is actually to support the people at the head of the table. When there's a lot of numbers in a brief, it's not uncommon for questions to pop up about how those numbers might be combined. So it can be helpful if there's somebody in the room with a calculator to do a little bit of arithmetic and make sure that the meeting proceeds smoothly. The people at the head of the table get their question answered, and the briefer gets out of the meeting without having a do-out. The next prop I like is the humble pen. In fact, you probably have a pen in your pocket now, and you've been using it for years to communicate that message of, "Yes, sir, I am taking your guidance." But there are at least 2 more nonverbal messages that you can send with a pen. First, I'm sure you know just how much old people love to pass on their wisdom. And so if you're just standing around and some grizzled old master sergeant makes a clever comment, you can absolutely make their day just by writing it down. The second way you can use a pen is as an intimidation technique. It's a bit like the calculator, but much, much more subtle. What you do is you spin your pen. Don't fidget with it. That'll make it look like you're nervous or distracted. But you spin your pen, and this is most effective when you're actively engaged. The reason this works is because even if you're good at spinning your pen, doing so requires a certain amount of cognitive effort. And so, if you're in a meeting and you're discussing some kind of complicated issue and you're spinning your pen, the message that you send to people is, "I don't find this issue particularly taxing." It's kind of like leading a run and not getting out of breath. The last prop I want to talk about is the coffee cup. And in fact, in my Pentagon days, you would almost never see me without a cup of coffee. Not because I particularly liked coffee, but because the cup itself was a useful tool. To see what I mean, a while back, I was working on this special project that was being led by a 3-star general. And this guy did the strangest thing I have ever seen. He had a humidor in his office, and whenever there was a meeting in there, he would go over and pull out a cigar and then play with it. He'd never light the cigar, but instead what he'd do is he'd cram it in the corner of his mouth, or he'd pull it out and he'd just roll it between his fingers and admire it. And I would just sit there thinking, this has got to be the most Sigmund Freud thing I have ever seen. Until I figured out what he was doing. You see, this general was an interrupter. You could see him get excited in the middle of a conversation, and it was clear that he wanted to jump in and say something. But the problem is that he's a 3-star. If he does interrupt and say something, then everybody will just shut up and start saying, yes, sir, or worse, they'll just start repeating back whatever he said. He didn't want that to happen, so what he was doing with the cigar was preventing himself from interrupting. As I watched him more closely, it became clear that every time he got excited and wanted to jump in, he would jam that cigar in his mouth and use it to cover his body language. I thought that was a pretty good idea, but a junior major can't exactly pull off the eccentricity of a cigar. So I started looking around for an alternative, and behold, the humble coffee cup. It's a common, everyday item that you can take just about anywhere, and when the time comes, you can just put the cup to your lips to stop yourself from jabbering away. In fact, if you're holding a coffee cup when you go visit somebody, it gives your impromptu meeting this air of informality. Now, there is one place that you do not want to take a coffee cup, and that is you don't want to show up late to a meeting with an executive with a cup of piping hot, fresh coffee. Kind of sends the wrong message. Now, at the beginning of this meeting, I offered a bonus prop, and I'll save the details for the discussion of human intelligence collection tactics. But for now, I just want to tell you that it is an 11 by 17 sheet of paper with a spreadsheet on it. That is one of my absolute favorite tools, but you guys probably have your own tactics and tools, and if you don't mind folks knowing your secrets, please put them in the comments and then watch this video.